You have probably believed for most of your life that your thoughts are who you are. When you wake up, your mind starts talking. It tells you stories about the past. It creates worries about the future. It gives you judgments about yourself and others. And without even noticing, you spend the entire day living inside these thoughts, as if they are reality. But what if that isn't true? What if the endless stream of thoughts in your head is not reality at all, but simply a voice? What if the true source of your suffering is not the world, not other people, not even your circumstances, but the way you believe every story your mind creates? This is the radical promise of the book. Don't believe everything you think. Its central message is as clear as it is powerful. You are not your thoughts. Your peace, your freedom, your joy, none of these depend on controlling the outside world. They depend only on recognizing the truth about your mind. The author, Joseph Nguyen, begins by sharing his own struggle. For years, he lived with constant anxiety and restlessness. He tried to fix it with achievements, therapy, self-help methods, but nothing worked. Each time he found a little relief, his mind would create new fears, new doubts, new stories. It felt endless. Maybe you have felt this too, like no matter what you do, the noise in your head never stops. But one day, something shifted. He realized that he was not the voice in his head. He was the one noticing the voice. And in that instant, a space opened up. Thoughts still came, but they no longer had the same power. The storm of the mind was still there, but he discovered the calm sky behind it. That awareness changed his life. This book is not about adding more beliefs to your mind. It is not about teaching you how to fix yourself. It is about helping you see what has been true all along. Your thoughts are not reality. Once you see this clearly, suffering begins to dissolve. Think of it like watching a movie. When you are deeply absorbed, you cry when the characters cry. You panic when they are in danger. You celebrate when they succeed. But the moment you remember, wait, this is just a movie, something changes. You may still enjoy it, but it no longer controls you. The same is true with your thoughts. The introduction of this book is not here to impress you with complicated theories. It is here to invite you into a new way of being, a way where you no longer live as a prisoner of every thought, but as the free awareness behind them. As you move through this summary, you will hear real stories, simple practices, and timeless wisdom from Zen teachings, from modern psychology, and from the author's own journey. Each chapter is designed to help you notice the truth, step by step. And as you listen, something deeper than thought will begin to awaken in you. You don't need to force this. You don't need to try hard to get it. The message is simple, and the moment you hear it with openness, it begins working within you. You will start to see your thoughts more clearly. You will begin to notice that peace is already here, underneath the noise. So let us begin with this one sentence, a sentence that has the power to transform your life if you truly understand it. You are not your thoughts. Say it again, quietly, inside yourself. Feel the space that opens when you realize this. You are the one who notices the thought, not the thought itself. That is your freedom. That is your truth. This is where our journey begins. Chapter 1: The Problem. Why we suffer. Suffering is something every human being knows. It doesn't matter how much success you achieve, how much money you make, or how many people admire you. At some point, you find yourself caught in pain. Sometimes it is the pain of failure, sometimes the loneliness of rejection, sometimes the fear of the future. But underneath all these different forms, the root of suffering is the same: believing everything the mind says. Think of a time when you were anxious about the future. Your mind created a story. What if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if people laugh at me? In reality, nothing had happened yet. The future was still open, but your body reacted as if those thoughts were real. Your heart raced, your stomach tightened, your sleep disappeared. You were suffering, not because of reality, but because of thoughts. The same happens with the past. You replay a mistake over and over again. You hear the voice, I should have done better. Why did I say that? I ruined everything. The event itself is gone, but the mind keeps bringing it back, stabbing you again and again with the memory. This is what the Zen masters call the second arrow. The first arrow is the pain of what happened. The second arrow is the suffering you create by replaying it in your thoughts. Joseph Nguyen explains that he spent years in this cycle. His mind would not stop talking, criticizing, comparing, worrying, and because he believed it all, life felt heavy. He tried therapy, meditation, apps, positive affirmations, even endless achievement, hoping success would silence the mind. But nothing worked for long, because the root problem was still there. He thought the voice in his head was who he was. You may recognize this in your own life. Maybe at work, you feel constant stress because your thoughts tell you, if I don't succeed, I'll lose everything. Maybe in relationships, your mind whispers, I'm not lovable, they will leave me. Maybe in daily life, even small challenges spiral into hours of overthinking. The outside situation is never the real prison. The prison is believing every thought without question. Zen teachings offer powerful stories to illustrate this. One famous parable is called the empty boat. Imagine you are rowing across a river, and suddenly another boat crashes into you. You feel anger rise. Who is this careless person? How dare they hit me? But then you look closer and see that the boat is empty, drifting with the current. Instantly, the anger disappears. The situation is the same, but your suffering vanishes when the story in your mind changes. This is the trap of the human mind. We are always filling the boat with people, intentions, and stories that may not even be true. Reality is neutral. It is our thoughts that make it painful. Another Zen teaching is the 2 arrows. The first arrow is inevitable, pain, loss, failure, illness. The second arrow is optional suffering, the extra layer of thought. Why me? This is unfair. I can't handle this. Most of our suffering comes not from the first arrow, but from shooting ourselves with the second one, again and again. The author emphasizes, this is why humans suffer more than necessary. Animals feel pain, but they don't add endless stories on top. A deer escapes a predator, and then goes back to grazing. But humans replay the attack in their minds for years, carrying fear long after the danger is gone. By now you may already see the pattern in your own life. Suffering is not created by reality itself. It is created by thought. And as long as you believe every thought, you will suffer. The good news is that the moment you begin to question your thoughts, suffering begins to lose its grip. This is the starting point of freedom. Recognizing the problem clearly. Not blaming life, not blaming yourself, but understanding that overthinking and identification with thought is the root cause. Once you see this, you are ready for the next step, learning how the mind really works. We often assume that suffering means something is wrong with us. We think, if I feel this much pain, I must be broken. Maybe I'm weak. Maybe I don't deserve happiness. But the author explains that this belief is itself another thought, another story. The truth is, suffering is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of being human. Every person alive knows what it feels like to be caught in their own mind. Think about modern life. A young professional sits at her desk late at night, staring at unfinished work. The project is not due for a week, yet her mind is already racing. What if I mess this up? What if my boss thinks I'm incompetent? What if this ruins my career? Her body tenses, her chest tightens, her mind spins. She hasn't even taken the first step on the project, but she is already exhausted, not from the work, but from the thoughts about the work. Or imagine a student preparing for an exam. He knows he has studied, he knows he understands the material, but the night before, his mind creates a storm. What if I forget everything? What if I fail? What if my family is disappointed? By the time he sits down to write the exam, his hands are shaking, his focus is gone. Not because the exam is impossible, but because he has already fought 100 battles in his head. The same happens in relationships. One harsh text message can create hours of suffering. The words themselves are simple, but the mind interprets. They're angry. They don't care about me. This relationship is ending. Soon you feel rejected, unloved, abandoned, all from a single message that may have had no such meaning. The suffering did not come from the text. It came from the story attached to it. The author shares that for years, he did the same thing. He worried constantly about the future. He feared failure in his career. He doubted his worth in relationships. Each time a thought appeared, he believed it completely, as if it were an unquestionable truth, and so he lived in constant fear and anxiety. But the turning point came when he realized, these are just thoughts. They are not reality. To understand this clearly, let's look at another Zen story. A man once carried a heavy sack of rocks. Everywhere he went, people asked him, "Why do you carry this burden?" He answered, "Because I've always had it. I don't know how to put it down." This is exactly how we live with our thoughts. We carry the weight of judgment, fear, and regret, not because we must, but because we don't realize we can let go. The problem is not that we think thoughts are natural. The problem is that we believe every thought without question. Imagine if someone followed you around all day, speaking constantly. Half of what they said was false, and yet you believed them completely. That would drive you crazy. And yet, this is exactly what happens inside our own minds. Our suffering continues because we are deeply identified with this inner voice. We think, "This is me. These thoughts define who I am." But as the book makes clear, you are not the voice. You are the one who hears the voice. This difference is the key to everything. But before we can get to freedom, we need to face the truth about suffering. We need to admit, most of our pain is self-created, not intentionally, not consciously, but through the habit of believing thoughts. And until we see this, we remain trapped. The author is gentle about this realization. He reminds us that there is nothing wrong with us. Overthinking and suffering are simply what the human mind does when left unchecked. It is not personal. It is not a flaw. It is just conditioning. And because it is learned, it can also be unlearned. So why do we suffer? Because we mistake thoughts for truth. Because we replay the past and predict the future, instead of living in the present. Because we shoot ourselves with a second arrow again and again. This is the universal human problem. But once we see it clearly, we are already taking the first step toward freedom. At this point, it becomes clear that suffering is not random. It has a pattern. It appears whenever the mind creates a story, and we believe that story as if it were reality. Once you start noticing this pattern, you can begin to see it everywhere. Imagine someone stuck in traffic. The cars are not moving. Horns are honking. The situation itself is just cars on a road. But the mind adds a layer. This is unbearable. I will be late. My whole day is ruined. Why is life always against me? Suddenly, frustration and anger rise. The suffering is not from the traffic. It is from the thoughts about the traffic. Another example, losing a job. The fact is simple. You are no longer employed at that company. But the mind adds, "I am a failure. I'll never recover. No one will hire me. My life is over." These thoughts cut deeper than the event itself. Many people collapse under the weight of these stories, even though the truth is that losing a job can also open doors to new opportunities. The suffering comes from believing the mind's interpretation, not from the event itself. Zen teachings capture this with elegant stories. One day, a man is walking through the forest at dusk. He sees something curled up on the path ahead, a snake. His body freezes, his breath stops, his heart races. Fear floods every part of him. But as he steps closer, he realizes it is just a coiled rope. Instantly, the fear disappears. The snake never existed. It was only in his mind. This is how our thoughts trick us daily. We suffer from illusions that vanish the moment we see them clearly. The author explains that our mind is like a storyteller that never stops talking. It is not that the storyteller is evil. It is simply doing what it was conditioned to do. It tries to protect us, to plan, to avoid pain. But in trying so hard to protect us, it fills our lives with unnecessary fear and endless worry. We end up living in a cage built from our own imagination. One powerful realization is this: suffering grows when we resist reality. Something happens, and instead of accepting it, we fight it in our minds. This shouldn't have happened. This isn't fair. I can't deal with this. The more we resist, the more we hurt. But resistance does not change reality. It only multiplies suffering. Think of holding a rope in a game of tug-of-war. The harder you pull against it, the more strain you feel. But the moment you let go, the struggle ends. Life works the same way. Suffering often comes from pulling against what is, instead of letting go and seeing clearly. The first step toward freedom is simply noticing, I am suffering because I am believing this thought. Even before you know how to change it, the awareness itself creates a little space. That space is the beginning of peace. Joseph Nguyen reminds us that we must be compassionate with ourselves in this process. For many years, we have lived trapped in thought. We cannot expect to be free overnight. Just as it took years to form these habits, it will take patience to loosen them. But every time we see the truth, suffering loses some of its power. And here is the hope. Suffering is not permanent. It is not who you are. It is only a passing storm created by thought. Beneath the storm is a sky that has always been calm and clear. Once you discover that sky, suffering will no longer control you. So why do we suffer? Because we believe the illusions of the mind. But once we see this clearly, we can begin the journey toward freedom. And that journey begins with understanding how the mind really works, the subject of the next part. Chapter 2. Understanding the mind. To begin freeing ourselves from suffering, we first need to understand how the mind works. The mind is like a machine that produces thoughts non-stop. From the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep, it creates story after story, commentary after commentary. Sometimes the thoughts are useful, like reminding you to pay a bill or guiding you through a task. But most of the time, they are repetitive, unnecessary, and filled with fear or judgment. Joseph Nguyen explains that the mind is not the enemy. It is simply doing what it was designed to do: predict, plan, and protect. For thousands of years, human survival depended on anticipating danger. Our ancestors who constantly thought about threats were more likely to survive. But in the modern world, where most of us are not facing life-threatening danger every day, the same survival mechanism has turned into overthinking and anxiety. Have you noticed how your mind loves to repeat the same worries again and again? It is like a song stuck on replay. This happens because the brain has learned that paying attention to problems feels like safety. But the truth is, thinking about the same worry 10 times does not make you safer. It only makes you more anxious. Here's a simple way to see it. Reality itself is neutral. Events happen, people act, situations unfold, but the mind immediately adds meaning. Suppose someone doesn't reply to your message. Reality: a message is unanswered. The mind: they must be upset. They don't care about me. I did something wrong. Suddenly, suffering arises not because of reality, but because of the story added by thought. The book teaches that this is the core illusion, mistaking thoughts for reality. The mind is like a projector, constantly casting images onto the screen of life. If we forget that it's just a projection, we mistake the image for the truth. This is why awareness is so important. It helps us step back and remember, this is just a thought. Another important point is the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is unavoidable in life. You may lose someone you love, face illness, or encounter failure. That is the first arrow. But suffering is the second arrow, created by the mind. This will destroy me. I can't handle this. Life is unfair. Pain is real, but suffering is optional, because it depends on believing the story in your head. The author uses the analogy of clouds and sky. Thoughts are like clouds, always moving, always changing. Some are light and harmless, some are dark and heavy. But no matter how many clouds appear, the sky remains unchanged. The problem comes when we mistake ourselves for the cloud. Instead of recognizing we are the sky, understanding the mind also means recognizing that we do not control our thoughts. They appear on their own. Think about it. Can you predict your next thought? Can you stop your mind from producing them? No. They arise spontaneously, just like your heartbeat or your breathing. The problem is not that thoughts arise. The problem is that we cling to them as if they define us. This realization is liberating. It means you don't have to take every thought so seriously. A thought can appear, and you can simply notice it without grabbing onto it. Just as you watch cars pass on the road, you can watch thoughts pass through your mind. This shift in relationship changes everything. The mind has served you in many ways, solving problems, learning skills, creating ideas. But when you let it run unchecked, it becomes a restless storyteller, pulling you into suffering. By understanding its nature, you begin to take back your freedom. You realize, my thoughts are not me. They are just passing events in my awareness. This is the foundation for the next step, building awareness. But before we go there, we must explore more deeply how the mind creates illusions, and how we can learn to see through them. One of the greatest illusions the mind creates is the belief that we can control everything if we just think enough. Have you ever noticed this? You replay the same problem again and again, as if worrying about it will somehow guarantee the outcome you want. But instead of solving the problem, you only exhaust yourself. The author explains that this illusion of control is one of the main reasons people suffer. The mind tells us, if you think about it hard enough, you can make it go the way you want. But reality doesn't work that way. No amount of thinking can change the past. No amount of worrying can guarantee the future. Control is limited, and most of it is an illusion created by thought. Consider someone waiting for medical test results. Reality: the results will come when they come. The mind: what if it's bad news? What if I'm sick forever? What if my life is over? The hours of waiting become torture. But does the thinking change the result? No. All it does is steal the present moment. This is how the mind keeps us trapped. Another example is in relationships. Imagine a person texting their partner and not getting a reply for several hours. Reality, there is no reply yet. The mind, they must be losing interest. Maybe they're talking to someone else. Maybe this relationship is ending. Hours of suffering pass. Then the partner finally replies, "Sorry, I was in a meeting." Instantly, the storm vanishes. The suffering was never caused by reality. It was caused by believing the mind's story. This is why the author says, reality is always neutral. It is the interpretation of the mind that makes it painful or pleasant. Two people can face the exact same situation and experience it completely differently. For example, losing a job. One person thinks, "This is the end, I'll never recover." They fall into despair. Another person thinks, "This is a new beginning. I finally have a chance to pursue what I really want." They feel hopeful. The event is the same, but the experience is shaped entirely by thought. Understanding the mind also requires seeing how repetitive it is. Studies show that most of our daily thoughts are the same as yesterday's thoughts, and many of them are negative. This means we are not actually thinking new things all the time. We are stuck in loops. Like a broken record, the mind replays the same worries, the same regrets, the same without awareness, we live inside this loop, mistaking it for reality. The author gives a practical suggestion. Begin noticing these loops. For a few days, write down the thoughts that repeat the most. You may discover that your mind has only a handful of favorite stories. "I'm not good enough. People will judge me. What if something goes wrong?" Seeing this in writing can be shocking. It reveals how much of your life is shaped by a few old patterns, but it also gives you power. Once you see the pattern, you can step back and say, it's just that same story again. Another truth about the mind is that it confuses imagination with reality. Have you ever felt your body react physically to a thought, like imagining an embarrassing moment and feeling your face flush, or worrying about the future and feeling your stomach tighten? The body responds as if the thought is real, but nothing is happening in reality. It's just the mind creating images. This is why awareness is so important. Without awareness, you get lost in the story. With awareness, you can say, "This is just a thought, not the truth." The thought may still come, but it loses its power to control you. The author uses the metaphor of a projector in a theater. The screen shows images, happy, sad, terrifying. If you forget that it's a movie, you get pulled into every emotion. But when you remember the projector, you can enjoy the movie without losing yourself in it. Your mind is the projector. Awareness is remembering that the movie is not real life. When we understand this, we begin to relax. We stop fighting every thought. We stop chasing control. We learn to see thoughts for what they are, passing events, like clouds in the sky. This understanding prepares us for the next stage, building awareness, the key that transforms knowledge into freedom. Now that we see how the mind works, the next step is to go even deeper into its nature. The author reminds us that the mind is not good or bad. It is simply a tool. Like fire, it can cook your food or burn your house down. It all depends on how you use it. One of the clearest analogies is the sky and the clouds. Imagine lying in a field on a summer day, watching clouds pass by. Some are light and fluffy, some are dark and heavy. They move, they change shape, they dissolve. If you identify with the cloud, you feel unstable, constantly shifting. But if you realize you are the sky, vast, open, unchanging, then the clouds no longer trouble you. Thoughts are clouds. You are the sky. This is why the author emphasizes, you are not broken. You don't need to fix your thoughts or get rid of them. You only need to see them clearly for what they are. A thought is not truth. A thought is not you. It is just passing through your awareness. But this is easier said than done, because the mind is persuasive. When a strong thought appears, it feels true. For example, "I'm not good enough." Even if logically you know it's just a thought, it can stir up deep feelings of shame or fear. That is why practice is essential. You must train yourself to notice thoughts without automatically believing them. Here are a few simple practices the author suggests. Watching thoughts like clouds. Sit quietly for a few minutes. Close your eyes and simply observe what thoughts arise. Don't try to stop them. Don't follow them. Just notice. Here is a thought about work. Here is a memory. Here is a worry. Imagine each thought as a cloud drifting across the sky of your mind. Some clouds may be heavy, but all of them eventually pass. The pause practice in daily life. Whenever a strong emotion arises, anger, fear, sadness, pause for just a few seconds. Take one deep breath. Ask yourself, what am I believing right now? Often you'll find the emotion is fueled by a story in your mind. Recognizing this creates space between you and the thought. Journaling repeated thoughts each evening. Write down the thoughts that came up most during the day. Look for patterns. Do you often think, I'm not safe, I'm not loved, I might fail? Seeing these patterns on paper helps you realize they are just recycled stories, not truths. The repetition reveals how little new information the mind actually gives. These practices are not about forcing the mind to stop. Thoughts may still come. The goal is to change your relationship with them, to shift from being lost in thought to being the observer of thought. Another point the author makes is that the mind is restless because it always wants certainty. It hates not knowing. That's why it constantly jumps to the future. What will happen? How can I make sure I'm safe? But the truth is, the future is always uncertain. No amount of thinking can remove that uncertainty. Accepting uncertainty is one of the most powerful ways to calm the mind. Think of standing by a river. The water flows endlessly. You cannot stop it. You cannot control every wave. All you can do is step back and watch the flow. The mind is the same. Thoughts will come and go, like water in a river. Fighting them only makes you drown. Watching them allows you to stay on the shore. Once you begin to understand the mind in this way, something shifts. You stop blaming yourself for having thoughts. You stop trying to force them away. Instead, you become curious. You watch them, and slowly you realize you are free to choose whether or not to believe them. This realization is the foundation of freedom. You are no longer trapped in every story your mind tells. You are learning to live from awareness, not from automatic thought, and this awareness is the bridge to the next step, discovering the power of presence. Part 3. Awareness. The first step to freedom. Awareness is the turning point. Up until now, we have seen that suffering comes from believing every thought. We have seen that the mind repeats old patterns, creates illusions of control, and confuses imagination with reality. But how do we step out of this cycle? The answer is awareness. Awareness means noticing your thoughts instead of being lost in them. It is the difference between watching a storm through the window and being stuck outside in the rain. When you are lost in thought, the storm tosses you around. But when you are aware, you can see the storm clearly while staying safe and dry. Joseph Nguyen explains that awareness is not something new you need to create. It is already here, right now. You are aware of these words. You are aware of your breath, your body, the sounds around you. Awareness is your natural state. The problem is that it gets covered by constant thinking, like clouds covering the sun. The first step to freedom is remembering you are the awareness, not the thought. Imagine sitting in a movie theater. The film on the screen pulls you in. You laugh, you cry, you feel fear. But the moment you remember, I am sitting in a theater watching a movie, everything shifts. The emotions may still come, but you no longer feel trapped. Awareness creates space. Here's a simple example. You are angry because a friend cancelled plans. The thought appears, they don't value me. I'm not important to them. Normally, you would believe this thought instantly and feel hurt. But with awareness, you notice, I'm having the thought that they don't care. Just that small shift changes everything. You are no longer fully inside the story. You are observing it. Awareness is powerful because it breaks the automatic chain between thought and reaction. Without awareness, a thought arises and you immediately react. Anger, fear, sadness. With awareness, a thought arises and you pause. You see it. And in that pause, you find freedom. The author emphasizes that awareness is not about fighting thoughts. It is not about forcing yourself to be positive. It is simply about seeing clearly. When you shine the light of awareness on a thought, it loses its grip. Just like darkness disappears when you turn on a lamp. Suffering begins to fade when you bring awareness to it. This is why spiritual teachers throughout history have emphasized awareness. The Buddha called it mindfulness. Eckhart Tolle calls it presence. Zen masters simply call it seeing. Different words, but the same truth. Freedom comes when you stop living blindly in thought and start living as the observer. To practice awareness, start small. Throughout your day, pause for a few moments and notice what your mind is doing. Maybe it is worrying, maybe it is judging, maybe it is planning. Don't try to change it, just notice. Each time you do this, you strengthen your ability to step back. Over time, awareness becomes more natural, and you begin to live with more peace. Think of awareness as a muscle. At first, it feels weak. You may notice a thought for 1 second, then get pulled back in. That's okay. Every time you notice, you are training the muscle. Slowly, it grows stronger. And one day, you realize you are no longer drowning in thought. You are watching the river flow, calm and steady on the shore. This is the first step to freedom, not escaping the mind, but seeing it clearly. Awareness is the doorway. Once you walk through it, life begins to change in ways you cannot imagine. Awareness is like turning on the light in a dark room. Before the light, you stumble around, bumping into things, hurting yourself, feeling lost. Once the light is on, the objects are the same, but now you can see them clearly and move with ease. Life is no different. The challenges, events, and emotions remain. But when you bring awareness, you stop hurting yourself with confusion. One of the traps the mind creates is autopilot living. Have you ever driven home from work and realized you barely remember the journey? Your body was moving, but your mind was lost in thought. The same thing happens in life. Days pass while we are lost in worries, judgments, and daydreams, barely noticing what's happening here and now. Awareness breaks this cycle by bringing you back to the present moment. Joseph Nguyen shares that when he first discovered awareness, he noticed how often his mind replayed old stories. He would catch himself thinking, "I should have done better. I should have said this. I should have been different." Each time he brought awareness, he realized the past was gone. Only the thought remained. Slowly, those thoughts began to lose power. You may see the same in your life. Perhaps your mind repeats, "I'm not enough. People don't respect me. I'll never succeed." Without awareness, these thoughts feel heavy, as if carved into stone. With awareness, you begin to see, this is just a thought. It is not reality. I don't have to believe it. Imagine the relief of carrying a heavy backpack for years, then realizing you can set it down. That is what awareness feels like. Awareness also reveals how much beauty we miss when lost in thought. Think of eating a meal while scrolling on your phone. You barely taste the food. But when you eat with awareness, noticing the colors, the flavors, the textures, the same meal feels alive and nourishing. Awareness transforms ordinary moments into something rich and meaningful. The same happens in relationships. If you listen to someone while your mind is racing with what you'll say next, you miss the depth of connection. But if you listen with full awareness, without judgment, you create space for real understanding. People feel seen, heard, and valued. This is one of the greatest gifts you can give. Another important point is that awareness brings compassion. When you notice your thoughts instead of believing them, you stop judging yourself so harshly. You see that the mind is simply doing what it has been conditioned to do. Instead of fighting it, you meet it with kindness. This self-compassion is healing. It softens the inner critic and allows you to grow without shame. Awareness also changes how you handle emotions. Normally, when anger or fear arises, the mind adds fuel. This is terrible. I can't handle this. It will never end. With awareness, you notice the emotion directly in the body. The heat of anger, the tightness of fear, the heaviness of sadness. You feel it fully, without adding a story. And when you do this, emotions rise and fall naturally, like waves in the ocean. They do not drown you. They simply pass through. This is why awareness is called the first step to freedom. It gives you space. It shows you that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your stories. You are the one who sees them. And in that seeing, you discover a calmness that has always been there beneath the noise. The author encourages us to practice awareness in small moments. Pause when you brush your teeth. Notice the sound of water, the sensation of the brush. Pause before you eat. Take one deep breath and taste the first bite fully. Pause during a conversation. Feel your feet on the ground as you listen. These simple acts bring you back to the present, where peace lives. Over time, awareness shifts from a practice to a way of being. You begin to live more awake, more present, more alive. The storms of thought may still come, but you no longer lose yourself in them. You have discovered the anchor of awareness, and it keeps you steady no matter how strong the winds blow. Awareness is more than just noticing thoughts. It is the key that unlocks transformation. When you step into awareness, you step out of the prison of the mind and into the freedom of the present moment. For many people, this shift feels like waking up from a dream. Life hasn't changed on the outside, but everything feels lighter. On the inside. Think about the relief of realizing that you don't have to fight with every thought. Before awareness, each thought felt like a command, something you had to obey. Worry about this, fear that, regret the past. With awareness, you see that thoughts are suggestions, not orders. You can choose whether to follow them or let them go. That choice is freedom. The author compares awareness to the sun. The sun doesn't fight the darkness. It simply shines, and the darkness disappears on its own. In the same way, awareness doesn't need to argue with thoughts. When you shine awareness on them, their grip weakens. They lose their power because you see them for what they are. This creates space for inspiration. Instead of living in old stories of fear and limitation, you begin to feel new possibilities. You realize that many of your limits were never real. They were only thoughts. For example, someone might think, I can never speak in public, I'm too shy. But with awareness, they see, this is just a thought. They may still feel nervous, but they are no longer defined by it. Step by step, they discover courage that was hidden beneath the noise of the mind. Awareness also brings peace in difficult times. Life will still bring challenges, illness, loss, disappointment. Awareness doesn't erase pain, but it changes your relationship with it. Instead of drowning in the story, this is the end, I can't handle this, you feel the raw emotion directly. You cry, you grieve, you feel the heaviness. But in the background, awareness remains steady, like the ground beneath a storm. This steadiness gives you strength to move through even the hardest moments. Another gift of awareness is gratitude. When the mind is noisy, we overlook simple joys, the warmth of sunlight, the laughter of a friend, the taste of a good meal. But with awareness, you start to notice them again. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. Gratitude naturally arises, not as a forced practice, but as a natural response to being present. Awareness also inspires action. When you are lost in thought, you hesitate, second-guess, and procrastinate. But when you are aware, you see clearly what needs to be done. You take the step without overthinking. The mind may still chatter, but it no longer paralyzes you. This is how awareness translates into power, not the power of controlling everything, but the power of moving forward with clarity and courage. For example, if you're starting a new venture and your mind says, this is going to be hard, I'm going to fail, you can reframe it. This is challenging, but I have the ability to learn and grow. I will take it one step at a time. This is how the mindset shift begins, by shifting your thoughts from fear to possibility. As you begin to shift your mindset, the key is consistency. Your mind will naturally want to return to the old patterns, to the familiar stories of doubt and fear. But with every conscious choice to think differently, you begin to rewire your brain. Each time you choose the empowering thought over the limiting one, you create a new habit, a habit of growth, not fear. The author shares a powerful story about how he started a new habit of positive self-talk. For years, he had been his own worst critic. If he made a mistake, his mind would instantly shout, "You're worthless. You'll never succeed." But one day, he decided to try something different. Every time that negative thought appeared, he would replace it with a positive affirmation. "I am learning. I am capable. Every failure is a lesson." At first, it felt unnatural. It didn't feel real. But over time, something shifted. Slowly, his mind began to accept the new beliefs. The old critical voice became quieter, and the voice of encouragement grew stronger. This shift in mindset doesn't require grand gestures. Small, consistent actions create the most profound changes. For example, let's say you have a goal to write a book, but your mind constantly tells you, "I'll never finish. This is too hard." Instead of listening to that voice, take one small step. Write for just 10 minutes a day. The first day, it may feel like you're barely moving forward, but after a few weeks, you'll look back and realize that those small steps add up. The mind, which once believed you couldn't do it, will start to change. The belief that you can succeed will begin to take root. One of the most important shifts in mindset is to move from reaction to response. Think about how many times your mind reacts automatically to stress. Maybe your boss gives you a task, and the first thought is, "I can't do this, I'm going to fail." Or perhaps a friend cancels plans, and you think, "They don't care about me, I'm alone." These are automatic reactions, driven by old patterns of thought. The new mindset shift is to respond, not react. When you feel that first wave of anxiety or stress, pause and ask, "What am I believing right now?" Notice the story your mind is telling you. Then, choose a new story. I am capable. I have handled challenges before, and I can do it again. This shift takes practice, but with awareness and consistency, it becomes natural. You no longer react from fear. You respond with confidence and clarity. Another powerful tool in building a new mindset is to surround yourself with support. The people you spend time with shape your beliefs, whether consciously or unconsciously. If you're trying to shift to a growth mindset but everyone around you is stuck in negativity, it becomes harder to stay on track. But when you surround yourself with people who support your growth, it becomes easier to believe in your own potential. The author emphasizes that even when people around you don't understand your journey, you can still choose to support yourself. Sometimes, the only voice you need to hear is your own, and the new, empowered mindset you are building. Another practice to strengthen your mindset is visualization. Visualizing your success is not about wishing for a perfect life. It's about creating a clear picture of your growth. Picture yourself taking action toward your goals, how you feel when you succeed, how others react to your progress. Visualization reminds your mind of the possibility and helps you take the next step with confidence. A key practice to embed this new mindset into your life is reframing your challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as roadblocks, see them as stepping stones. Instead of saying, "This is impossible," say, "This is challenging, but I will figure it out. I'm growing stronger every day." This reframing shifts your perspective from one of victimhood to one of empowerment. Mindset is not something that happens all at once. It's a continuous journey. Each day presents new opportunities to choose a different thought, a different story, a different belief. At first, it may feel like you're trying to change everything at once, but over time, the new patterns will take root. One day, you'll realize that your mindset has completely shifted, not because you forced it, but because you practiced it daily. The most important lesson is this: you have the power to choose your thoughts. No matter what your mind says, you are not a victim of it. With awareness, consistency, and practice, you can choose a mindset that serves your highest potential. This is the heart of transformation, recognizing that you are the creator of your life. You are not bound by the past, and you are not limited by old thought patterns. You are free to choose new beliefs, new actions, and new outcomes. Chapter 5. Living with clarity and action. Now that we've laid the foundation of awareness and shifted our mindset, the next step is to take action. It's one thing to think differently, to have a new perspective, but the real change happens when you begin to live it. Action is what transforms thoughts into results. Joseph Nguyen explains that clarity is the key to effective action. Most of us spend our lives reacting to situations, responding automatically based on old patterns and fears. But when you bring awareness to your thoughts and shift your mindset, you stop reacting. Instead, you begin to respond with clarity, purpose, and intention. The first action step is to set clear, focused goals. Many people go through life without a clear vision of what they want. They're just reacting to whatever life throws at them. But clarity comes when you ask yourself, what do I really want? What does success look like for me? Once you have that clear picture, everything else falls into place. You begin to take steps that move you toward your goals, rather than drifting aimlessly. This clarity allows you to take intentional actions, not impulsive reactions. For example, when faced with a challenge, your new mindset says, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow?" Instead of reacting with fear or frustration, you respond with curiosity and problem solving. This shift from reaction to action is what leads to growth. One practice the author recommends is breaking your goals into small, manageable steps. When you're working on something big, it's easy to get overwhelmed. You look at the mountain and feel like it's too steep to climb. But when you break it down into smaller steps, it becomes more manageable. You start with the first step, and once that's completed, the next step seems easier. Every small action leads to progress. Another important principle is consistency over perfection. Many people never start because they fear they won't do something perfectly. They wait for the right time, the perfect plan, the perfect moment. But the truth is, there is no such thing as a perfect moment. The only moment that matters is now. Start where you are, with what you have, and take the next step. For example, let's say you want to get fit. Instead of thinking you need to work out for an hour every day, just start with 10 minutes. Do it consistently, and over time, you'll build the habit. As you progress, you can add more time or intensity. The key is starting with action, no matter how small. In the same way, when working toward any goal, action builds momentum. The first step is always the hardest. You may feel fear or doubt, but every small step forward creates a sense of accomplishment. And that accomplishment fuels further action. Living with clarity in action also means taking responsibility for your life. The old mindset often blames external circumstances. If only this had happened. If only they had done this differently. But the new mindset says, I am responsible for how I respond. I am responsible for my choices. Taking full responsibility means understanding that you have the power to change your life through your thoughts and actions. You no longer wait for external conditions to change. You make the change yourself. Another key point is embracing discomfort. Often, the greatest growth happens outside of our comfort zones. The mind resists discomfort, trying to keep us safe. But if you want to grow, you must be willing to step into the unknown, to feel the fear and do it anyway. As the author notes, every time he stepped out of his comfort zone, he grew stronger and more confident. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Are you stuck in a pattern of overthinking, doubting, and waiting? Clarity and action come when you decide to stop waiting for the perfect moment and start taking steps, even if they're small. The journey may not always be smooth, but every step forward is a step toward your true potential. Taking action toward your goals can sometimes feel overwhelming. We are often stuck in a cycle of planning and overthinking, thinking that if we just figure everything out first, then we can take action. But the truth is, clarity comes from doing, not just thinking. You can never plan your way to success. You have to act your way there. One of the first steps toward effective action is breaking big tasks into small, manageable actions. This is something the author realized after years of feeling paralyzed by big goals. He would look at a project and think, this is too much. There's no way I can do it all. But when he started breaking it down into smaller tasks, the whole thing seemed much more doable. For example, if your goal is to write a book, instead of thinking, I need to write 50,000 words, start by committing to writing 500 words a day. That's only about a page. When you consistently write those 500 words, you will find that it adds up quickly. Breaking big tasks into small, simple steps creates momentum. And as you take each step, you build confidence in your ability to succeed. Momentum is key when building a habit or working toward a goal. The first step is always the hardest, but once you get moving, it becomes easier. The author shares that when he started practicing awareness every day, it felt difficult. At first, it seemed like nothing was changing, but as he continued practicing, it became easier. The mind began to settle more quickly, and the moments of peace became more frequent. The habit of mindfulness began to build, and with it, clarity and calmness. The same principle applies to your own life. Whether you're working on a career project, learning a new skill, or improving your relationships, the key is to build small, consistent actions. The more consistently you take these steps, the clearer your path becomes. One practice that can help is daily reflection. Every night, take a few moments to think about the actions you took during the day. What went well? What could you improve? This practice not only keeps you on track, but also helps you adjust your actions as needed. Reflection allows you to celebrate your wins, no matter how small, and to learn from your mistakes. Another practice is celebrating progress. We often focus on what still needs to be done, instead of celebrating what has already been achieved. The author shares that he made a conscious effort to celebrate even small wins, like completing a chapter of his book, or practicing mindfulness for 10 minutes. These celebrations are not about being arrogant. They're about acknowledging the effort you are putting in. Small wins create momentum and fuel your desire to keep going. Clarity comes when you act with purpose. When you set a goal, don't get lost in the noise of endless planning. Take the first step, even if it feels uncertain. When you act with intention, the path will become clearer. The author highlights that often, people wait for certainty before they take action. But the truth is, there is no perfect moment to start. Clarity comes through action, not waiting. Another important concept is embracing discomfort. Change is uncomfortable. The mind doesn't like uncertainty. It prefers to stay in the familiar, even if that familiarity brings pain or dissatisfaction. But the only way to create something new is to step outside of that comfort zone. For example, when you start a new fitness routine, your body may feel sore. The mind may say, "I can't do this, it's too hard." But when you push through that discomfort, you begin to see progress. The discomfort is not a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that you're growing. Growth only happens when we challenge ourselves. The author shares how, in his own life, he had to embrace the discomfort of trying new things. Whether it was facing his fears of failure or learning to trust himself in relationships, the discomfort always led to growth. And with every step of growth, clarity followed. He began to see more clearly what was truly important in his life. Another practice that builds clarity is mindful action. Mindfulness is often thought of as a passive practice, something you do when you sit quietly, but mindfulness can also be active. When you take action, do so with full presence. Whether you're writing an email, having a conversation, or taking a walk, be fully present in the moment. By bringing mindfulness to your actions, you improve the quality of everything you do, and you begin to see things more clearly. Lastly, trusting the process is essential. Often, we try to rush the journey. We want results now, but true growth takes time. The author reminds us that patience is a crucial part of the process. Each small step you take, each moment of awareness, each action toward your goal is part of the journey. Trust that everything is unfolding as it should. As you continue taking action with clarity, the path to transformation becomes increasingly evident. The key is to keep moving forward, even when the way seems unclear or the road gets difficult. The author reminds us that transformation is not a one-time event. It's a continuous process of taking small, meaningful actions every day. One important practice is to stop waiting for the perfect moment. Most people think that in order to take action, everything must align perfectly: the right time, the right conditions, the right mood. But this thinking keeps us stuck. The author shares how he once waited for the perfect time to start his personal growth journey, but realized that the best time to start is always now. Small actions lead to big results over time. Whether it's a small step toward a career goal, a new habit, or even a change in your mindset, action builds momentum. Each action, no matter how small, shifts your reality. When you repeatedly take action with intention, the universe responds. Opportunities start appearing, doors open, and you start seeing the path forward. One of the author's key realizations was that confidence comes from doing. Often, we think that confidence comes from mastering something or knowing we'll succeed. But real confidence comes from the willingness to take action despite the fear. Confidence grows as you take the first step, the second, and the next, each time proving to yourself that you can handle whatever comes your way. Another transformative practice is embracing imperfection. Perfectionism often paralyzes us, making us feel that if we can't do something perfectly, we shouldn't do it at all. The new mindset, however, is about taking action despite imperfection. The author reflects on how many times he hesitated to start a project because he feared it wouldn't be perfect, but when he finally began, he realized that progress is more important than perfection. Every step forward, even with mistakes, is still progress. To embody this new mindset, the author recommends setting small, daily intentions. Every morning, take a moment to decide how you want to show up that day. Maybe it's to stay present, to be kind, to take action toward a specific goal, or to practice self-compassion. By setting clear intentions, you give yourself direction and purpose, and you begin each day with clarity and focus. Another powerful practice is visualizing success. This is not about dreaming or wishing for things to happen, but about creating a mental image of your success. The author explains how he used to visualize himself achieving his goals every day. This wasn't just wishful thinking, it was a mental practice that aligned his thoughts and actions with his desired outcomes. Visualization helps you stay connected to your purpose, even when things get tough. Additionally, celebrating every win is vital. Often, we get so caught up in what's next that we forget to acknowledge how far we've come. Whether it's completing a task, reaching a small milestone, or even making it through a challenging day, celebration builds momentum. The author shares how he used to gloss over his achievements, but once he started celebrating even the smallest wins, his sense of accomplishment grew exponentially. Transformation requires patience and persistence. It's easy to become frustrated when progress seems slow, but the author emphasizes that every small action is contributing to your growth. The path to success is never linear. There will be setbacks, challenges, and times when you feel stuck. But when you keep moving forward, no matter how small the steps, you are moving toward your desired outcome. The final piece of the puzzle is trusting the process. Sometimes it's hard to see immediate results from the actions you're taking, but trust that each step is leading you closer to the person you are becoming. The author reminds us that life's journey is not about a destination, it's about the person you become along the way. Chapter 6: Transformation. Transformation is the natural result of living with clarity and action. It is not a sudden event but a gradual unfolding, like a seed growing into a tree. At first, the changes might seem small and barely noticeable, but over time, they compound and reveal themselves in profound ways. Transformation happens when you consistently show up as your best self, day after day. The author shares that he didn't see his transformation all at once. In the beginning, it felt like nothing was changing. He continued to practice awareness, shifted his mindset, and took action, but the results seemed far off. But as he continued on the path, one day he realized that he was no longer the person he had been. The old patterns, the old fears, the old beliefs had loosened their grip. He was no longer trapped in the same cycles. This is the power of consistent action. Transformation doesn't always look like dramatic, instant changes. It's the small, daily efforts that build up over time and create the foundation for real growth. Just as it takes time for a seed to sprout and grow into a strong tree, transformation requires patience. For example, if your goal is to write a book, instead of thinking, "I need to write 50,000 words, start by committing to writing 500 words a day. That's only about a page. When you consistently write those 500 words, you will find that it adds up quickly. Breaking big tasks into small, simple steps creates momentum, and as you take each step, you build confidence in your ability to succeed. Momentum is key when building a habit or working toward a goal. The first step is always the hardest, but once you get moving, it becomes easier. The author shares that when he started practicing awareness every day, it felt difficult. At first, it seemed like nothing was changing, but as he continued practicing, it became easier. The mind began to settle more quickly, and the moments of peace became more frequent. The habit of mindfulness began to build, and with it, clarity and calmness. The same principle applies to your own life. Whether you're working on a career project, learning a new skill, or improving your relationships, the key is to build small, consistent actions. The more consistently you take these steps, the clearer your path becomes. One practice that can help is daily reflection. Every night, take a few moments to think about the actions you took during the day. What went well? What could you improve? This practice not only keeps you on track, but also helps you adjust your actions as needed. Reflection allows you to celebrate your wins, no matter how small, and to learn from your mistakes. Another practice is celebrating progress. We often focus on what still needs to be done, instead of celebrating what has already been achieved. The author shares that he made a conscious effort to celebrate even small wins, like completing a chapter of his book, or practicing mindfulness for 10 minutes. These celebrations are not about being arrogant. They're about acknowledging the effort you are putting in. Small wins create momentum and fuel your desire to keep going. Clarity comes when you act with purpose. When you set a goal, don't get lost in the noise of endless planning. Take the first step, even if it feels uncertain. When you act with intention, the path will become clearer. The author highlights that often, people wait for certainty before they take action. But the truth is, there is no perfect moment to start. Clarity comes through action, not waiting. Another important concept is embracing discomfort. Change is uncomfortable. The mind doesn't like uncertainty. It prefers to stay in the familiar, even if that familiarity brings pain or dissatisfaction. But the only way to create something new is to step outside of that comfort zone. For example, when you start a new fitness routine, your body may feel sore. The mind may say, "I can't do this, it's too hard." But when you push through that discomfort, you begin to see progress. The discomfort is not a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that you're growing. Growth only happens when we challenge ourselves. The author shares how, in his own life, he had to embrace the discomfort of trying new things. Whether it was facing his fears of failure or learning to trust himself in relationships, the discomfort always led to growth. And with every step of growth, clarity followed. He began to see more clearly what was truly important in his life. Another practice that builds clarity is mindful action. Mindfulness is often thought of as a passive practice, something you do when you sit quietly, but mindfulness can also be active. When you take action, do so with full presence. Whether you're writing an email, having a conversation, or taking a walk, be fully present in the moment. By bringing mindfulness to your actions, you improve the quality of everything you do, and you begin to see things more clearly. Lastly, trusting the process is essential. Often, we try to rush the journey. We want results now, but true growth takes time. The author reminds us that patience is a crucial part of the process. Each small step you take, each moment of awareness, each action toward your goal is part of the journey. Trust that everything is unfolding as it should. As you continue taking action with clarity, the path to transformation becomes increasingly evident. The key is to keep moving forward, even when the way seems unclear or the road gets difficult. The author reminds us that transformation is not a one-time event. It's a continuous process of taking small, meaningful actions every day. One important practice is to stop waiting for the perfect moment. Most people think that in order to take action, everything must align perfectly: the right time, the right conditions, the right mood. But this thinking keeps us stuck. The author shares how he once waited for the perfect time to start his personal growth journey, but realized that the best time to start is always now. Small actions lead to big results over time. Whether it's a small step toward a career goal, a new habit, or even a change in your mindset, action builds momentum. Each action, no matter how small, shifts your reality. When you repeatedly take action with intention, the universe responds. Opportunities start appearing, doors open, and you start seeing the path forward. One of the author's key realizations was that confidence comes from doing. Often, we think that confidence comes from mastering something or knowing we'll succeed. But real confidence comes from the willingness to take action despite the fear. Confidence grows as you take the first step, the second, and the next, each time proving to yourself that you can handle whatever comes your way. Another transformative practice is embracing imperfection. Perfectionism often paralyzes us, making us feel that if we can't do something perfectly, we shouldn't do it at all. The new mindset, however, is about taking action despite imperfection. The author reflects on how many times he hesitated to start a project because he feared it wouldn't be perfect, but when he finally began, he realized that progress is more important than perfection. Every step forward, even with mistakes, is still progress. To embody this new mindset, the author recommends setting small, daily intentions. Every morning, take a moment to decide how you want to show up that day. Maybe it's to stay present, to be kind, to take action toward a specific goal, or to practice self-compassion. By setting clear intentions, you give yourself direction and purpose, and you begin each day with clarity and focus. Another powerful practice is visualizing success. This is not about dreaming or wishing for things to happen, but about creating a mental image of your success. The author explains how he used to visualize himself achieving his goals every day. This wasn't just wishful thinking, it was a mental practice that aligned his thoughts and actions with his desired outcomes. Visualization helps you stay connected to your purpose, even when things get tough. Additionally, celebrating every win is vital. Often, we get so caught up in what's next that we forget to acknowledge how far we've come. Whether it's completing a task, reaching a small milestone, or even making it through a challenging day, celebration builds momentum. The author shares how he used to gloss over his achievements, but once he started celebrating even the smallest wins, his sense of accomplishment grew exponentially. Transformation requires patience and persistence. It's easy to become frustrated when progress seems slow, but the author emphasizes that every small action is contributing to your growth. The path to success is never linear. There will be setbacks, challenges, and times when you feel stuck. But when you keep moving forward, no matter how small the steps, you are moving toward your desired outcome. The final piece of the puzzle is trusting the process. Sometimes, it's hard to see immediate results from the actions you're taking, but trust that each step is leading you closer to the person you are becoming. The author reminds us that life's journey is not about a destination, it's about the person you become along the way. Chapter 6: Transformation. Transformation is the natural result of living with clarity and action. It is not a sudden event but a gradual unfolding like a seed growing into a tree. At first, the changes might seem small and barely noticeable, but over time, they compound and reveal themselves in profound ways. Transformation happens when you consistently show up as your best self, day after day. The author shares that he didn't see his transformation all at once. In the beginning, it felt like nothing was changing. He continued to practice awareness, shifted his mindset, and took action, but the results seemed far off. But as he continued on the path, one day he realized that he was no longer the person he had been. The old patterns, the old fears, the old beliefs had loosened their grip. He was no longer trapped in the same cycles. This is the power of consistent action. Transformation doesn't always look like dramatic, instant changes. It's the small, daily efforts that build up over time and create the foundation for real growth. Just as it takes time for a seed to sprout and grow into a strong tree, transformation requires patience. The first sign of transformation is peace. As you continue to practice awareness and shift your mindset, you start to feel more at peace with yourself and the world around you. The constant chatter of the mind quiets down. You no longer feel the need to chase after approval, validation, or control. Instead, you are content with who you are and where you are in life. This peace isn't the absence of challenges or difficulty. It's the ability to navigate those challenges with calmness and clarity. The storms of life still come, but they no longer knock you off course. You are steady, like the center of a wheel while the world spins around you. The author highlights that transformation is not about perfection. It's not about becoming flawless or constantly happy. It's about becoming more authentic, more true to yourself. Transformation is about shedding the layers of fear, doubt, and insecurity that have kept you small, and stepping into a version of yourself that is aligned with your deepest truth. As you grow, you begin to notice how much your mindset has shifted. Where you once saw obstacles, you now see opportunities. Where you once felt overwhelmed by fear, you now feel a sense of trust in yourself. This shift in perspective is one of the most powerful signs of transformation. You no longer feel like a victim of your circumstances. You feel like the creator of your life. Another sign of transformation is resilience. Life will always bring challenges, and in the past, you might have found yourself overwhelmed, defeated, or stuck. But as you continue to practice awareness and shift your mindset, you begin to develop a new strength. You may face setbacks, but instead of letting them hold you back, you face them with courage. You understand that setbacks are just opportunities for growth, and each one teaches you something valuable. Transformation also brings greater compassion. As you release judgment and embrace self-compassion, you begin to extend the same kindness to others. You recognize that everyone is on their own journey, struggling with their own thoughts and fears. You see their pain not as something to fix, but as something to understand and embrace. This compassion becomes the foundation for deeper, more meaningful connections. The author emphasizes that transformation is not a destination, but a way of being. It is not about achieving some perfect life, free from all problems. It's about living in alignment with your true self, embracing the imperfections of life, and responding to challenges with clarity, courage, and love. One of the greatest gifts of transformation is the ability to enjoy the present moment. So much of our suffering comes from either living in the past or worrying about the future. But when you are fully present, you see the beauty in the small things, the laughter of a friend, the warmth of the sun, the simplicity of a quiet moment. Transformation brings a sense of gratitude for life as it is, not as you wish it to be. As you continue to transform, you begin to see the world with new eyes. The obstacles you once thought were insurmountable are now just opportunities for growth. The fears you once believed were true are now recognized for what they are, passing thoughts, not facts. You are no longer controlled by your thoughts or your past. Instead, you are free to create your future, to live in alignment with your highest values. Transformation is a quiet evolution. It doesn't always announce itself with grand gestures or dramatic changes, but over time, it is felt in how you show up in the world, in your relationships, and in your approach to challenges. One of the most powerful aspects of transformation is the shift from reaction to intentional action. The author reflects on how, in the past, his responses to challenges were often knee-jerk reactions, rooted in fear, insecurity, and old patterns. If something went wrong at work, he would immediately spiral into self-doubt and worry. If someone criticized him, he would take it as a personal attack, often retreating into himself. But as he practiced awareness and shifted his mindset, he began to respond differently. Instead of reacting to life with fear and defensiveness, he learned to respond with clarity and confidence. When faced with a challenge, he would pause, reflect, and then choose his response based on the values he wanted to live by. This shift created more peace in his life, because he was no longer controlled by his emotions or the stories his mind created. He was in charge. This is one of the signs of true transformation, the ability to respond instead of react. It's about having the mental space to choose how you want to act in any given moment, instead of being swept away by automatic, habitual thoughts. And this ability comes from practicing awareness, building a growth-oriented mindset, and taking consistent action. Another sign of transformation is embracing impermanence. Life is constantly changing. The mind often resists change because it wants things to stay the same. It wants certainty, stability, and control. But when you embrace change as part of life, you release the struggle against it. The author recalls how, in his earlier years, he feared change. He tried to cling to stability in his job, his relationships, and his personal life. But as he grew, he began to see that change was not something to fear, it was something to embrace. Change meant growth, new opportunities, and the chance to evolve. When he stopped resisting change, life began to flow more easily. This shift in perspective brings greater peace. When you stop fighting against the natural ebb and flow of life, you start to feel a sense of ease. The ups and downs of life no longer feel like obstacles, they feel like waves to ride. The same challenges that once caused fear and stress now become opportunities for growth and learning. The author shares that transformation also brings greater trust in oneself. When you start taking consistent action, you begin to see that you are capable of handling more than you thought. At first, taking action might feel uncomfortable. You might doubt yourself or worry about failure, but as you keep moving forward, you build trust in your ability to navigate challenges. This self-trust leads to more courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. The more you act in alignment with your values, the more courage you cultivate. Each step you take, no matter how small, strengthens your belief in yourself. And this belief in yourself is one of the most transformative aspects of growth. Transformation also brings a deeper sense of purpose. The more you live in alignment with your true self, the more you begin to understand what truly matters to you. The author reflects on how, as he shifted his mindset and took consistent action, his sense of purpose became clearer. He realized that his goals and values were not defined by society's expectations, but by his own inner calling. This sense of purpose brings greater fulfillment. Instead of living in reaction to what others think or expect, you begin to live in alignment with your own truth. This is where true happiness lies, not in chasing external success or validation, but in knowing that you are living authentically. One of the final signs of transformation is unconditional love and compassion. As you free yourself from the grip of fear and negative thinking, you begin to see others more clearly. You no longer view people through the lens of judgment or comparison. Instead, you see them as fellow travelers on the same journey. This shift allows you to offer love and compassion freely, without needing anything in return. The author shares how this shift changed his relationships. As he began to love and accept himself, he was able to love and accept others more fully. He stopped seeing people as threats or competition, and began to see them as allies. This change not only deepened his relationships, but also created a sense of peace within himself. Transformation is not about perfection. It's about growth, self-awareness, and alignment with your deepest truth. It's about recognizing that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your past. You are the awareness that sees all of it. And once you realize this, you step into a life of limitless possibilities. So if you're wondering if transformation is possible for you, the answer is absolutely. You are not stuck. You are not defined by your past. You are capable of change, capable of growth, and capable of living a life full of peace, love, and purpose. The journey to transformation starts with one simple step: awareness. And from there, everything else unfolds. Transformation is not a destination, but a continual unfolding of the best version of yourself. As you progress, you start to notice the world differently, and more importantly, you begin to notice yourself differently. The power to transform lies within you. It always has. It's not about changing who you are. It's about remembering who you've always been. One of the most beautiful things about transformation is how it affects your relationship with others. As you begin to love and accept yourself, you naturally extend that same love and acceptance to others. You stop seeing people as obstacles or threats. Instead, you see them as fellow beings on the same journey. This shift creates deeper, more meaningful connections, rooted in understanding and compassion. The author shares that one of the most profound changes he experienced was in his relationships. As he grew in awareness, he began to communicate more openly, listen more deeply, and love more fully. The shift was subtle at first, but over time, it created a profound difference in how he showed up for others and for himself. Another vital aspect of transformation is trust in the process. It's easy to get discouraged when results aren't immediate or when things don't go according to plan. But true transformation happens not in the perfection of the end result, but in the consistency of the process. Trust that every step forward, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction. The author encourages you to stay committed to the journey, even when it feels slow or uncertain. Remember that the process of transformation is not linear. There will be setbacks, moments of doubt, and times when you feel like you're not making progress. But every time you bring awareness to a thought, every time you choose a positive mindset, every time you take action toward your goals, you are transforming. Finally, transformation is about living with purpose. It's about realizing that you are not here to live someone else's story. You are here to live your own, a story shaped by your values, your beliefs, and your inner truth. As you continue on this journey, you will find that life becomes more meaningful when you live it with intention. As the author wraps up, he reminds you, transformation is not about achieving perfection or avoiding difficulties. It's about learning to navigate life with a sense of peace, clarity, and purpose. The road may not always be easy, but it is always worth it. So, where do you go from here? The answer is simple. Continue practicing awareness, take intentional actions every day, and trust the process. Your transformation is already happening, and every choice you make brings you closer to the best version of yourself. Remember, transformation isn't a one-time event. It is a lifetime practice, a lifetime of growth, learning, and embracing the full beauty of who you are. Keep moving forward, and watch as your life unfolds in ways you never imagined possible. As we come to the end of this journey, it's important to pause and reflect on the core truths we've explored. The central message is simple, yet profound. Thoughts are not reality. So often, we mistake the endless stream of thoughts in our minds for the truth of our lives. We believe that what we think is who we are. But as we have seen, this is not the case. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. When you recognize this truth, everything changes. No longer are you at the mercy of every passing thought. You no longer identify with the fears, doubts, and judgments that arise. You are free to choose your response. You can stand apart from your thoughts, noticing them without being consumed by them. This is the first step to peace. Peace is always here. It is not something you have to chase. It is not something you need to earn. It is your natural state, underneath the noise of thought. The more you practice awareness, the more you'll begin to feel this peace in every moment. It is available to you at all times, regardless of what is happening around you. This realization is the foundation of freedom. Most of our suffering comes from believing that our thoughts are reality. When you let go of this belief, you free yourself from the prison of your mind. You no longer have to live in fear or worry about things that haven't happened yet, or regrets about things that have already passed. You can live fully in the present, in the freedom of awareness. Let's take a moment to revisit the key messages that have guided us. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts are fleeting. They arise and pass, just like clouds in the sky. They do not define you. Suffering is optional. Life brings pain, but you don't have to add suffering. You don't have to believe every thought that arises. Reality is neutral. It is the story you tell yourself that gives meaning to the events in your life. When you change the story, the experience changes. Peace is always within reach. It is not something to be achieved, but something to be uncovered. The moment you stop believing the mind's stories, peace is revealed. These truths are simple, but powerful, and it's important to repeat them, to remind yourself daily of who you really are. When life gets challenging, come back to these messages. When the mind becomes loud and overwhelming, remember that you don't have to believe everything it says. You are the sky, and the thoughts are just passing clouds. The journey doesn't stop here. Transformation is not a destination, but a continuous practice. Every day, you have the opportunity to choose awareness, to choose peace, and to choose freedom. Even in small moments you can practice. You can pause, Notice your thoughts and choose not to identify with them. This is the path to liberation. So, what's the next step? The answer is simple. Begin now. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter how many times you've fallen back into old patterns. The moment you notice your thoughts, the moment you recognize that you are the awareness behind them, you are already free. Start with small steps. You don't need to change everything at once. Begin by noticing one thought, just one, and seeing it for what it is. When fear arises, simply pause and say, "This is just a thought. It is not my truth." When doubt appears, remind yourself, "I am capable. I am learning. I don't need to believe this thought." The more you practice, the easier it becomes to live with clarity, peace, and purpose. Remember, you are not broken. You are not a victim of your thoughts, your past, or your circumstances. You are whole, complete, and already free. You are the one who notices, the one who chooses, the one who lives from awareness. Transformation is not a perfect journey. It's not about being flawless. It's about being authentic. It's about embracing your humanity, understanding that growth is a process, and being kind to yourself along the way. You will stumble, you will struggle, but that is not failure. That is part of the process. The more you allow yourself to learn from each moment, the more you'll continue to grow. The hope is this: anyone can live free. Anyone can step out of the trap of overthinking and fear. Anyone can choose to live with awareness, clarity, and peace. And it begins with the first step, the step of awareness. So take that first step now. You have the power within you. The journey may be long, but every step forward brings you closer to the truth of who you really are. And every step is worth it.